right, we're going to go ahead and call Senate Committee on Revenue to order. Mr. Secretary, please call the roll.
Senator Dennis. Here. Senator Ratty. Senator Kieckeffer. Here. Senator Sievers-Gansert. Here. Chair Neal.
Here. So please mark Senator Ratty present as she arrives. So we have 3 bills on for a hearing today. We will hear them in order. And so I will go ahead and open the hearing up for AB 20. And I believe this is GOED. So will it be you, Director Brown, or Mr. Hume presenting?
Madam Chair, will be both of us, Mr. Price and myself.
Oh, okay. All right. So we're ready.
So just to put some context around these bills, when I was appointed in November of 19, which seems like a long time ago, but was just recent, I turned to the staff and I said, this agency is a decade old. Please take a look at your statutes, find out what needs updated, what's working, what isn't working, and we'll go to the legislature and try to get some of that modernized. And I also, when I came in, made a commitment to strengthen the agency's compliance work, started a quarterly director-to-director meeting on abatement incentive and incentive audits and everything going on with the Department of Taxation, which includes my operational staff and the Director of Taxation's operational staff. And we've made a series of internal improvements in that area, but also one of the measures today comes to us from the Department of Taxation to help strengthen compliance. All of these are designed to basically update our statutes and to make compliance improvements. They're not designed to be policy changes. Obviously, with the onset of the pandemic and the dislocation of the Nevada economy, particularly the Southern Nevada economy, the governor wants to keep all the available tools that are at our disposal now as we are in this highly competitive economic development world. As I mentioned in the first oversight hearing that was done at the start of this session, American manufacturing is busy trying to sort out its supply chains, its logistics change, the new demands of e-commerce. And Nevada, as a Pacific time zone state, is particularly attractive to these companies. And we have a whole series of discussions going underway right now with them, and so we're not anxious to make any major changes. Like I say, these 3 bills, and I regret that it couldn't be one big bill, are really just designed to update things within the agency. And so with that, I'll turn to Eric Price, who runs the Nevada, I use the term Nevada Film Office, but officially I guess it's Nevada Motion Picture Office. And that's one of the things that we're trying to change and to modernize that. So the chair's ready. I'll let Eric proceed. And I'm Michael Brown, Director of Governor's Office of Economic Development.
Well, thank you, Director Brown. Again, my name is Eric Price, and I'm the Director of the Nevada Film Office. Just going to read a little prepared testimony. Chair Neal and members of the Senate Committee on Revenue and Economic Development, thank you for this opportunity to testify in support of AB 20, Assembly Bill 20. For the record, my name is Eric Price, and I am the Director of the Nevada Film Office that is housed in the Governor's Office of Economic Development. I'm here today with my colleagues, Executive Director Michael Brown, Kim Spurgeon, our Film Office Analyst, and James Hum, our Director of Compliance and Regulatory Affairs. Let me provide a quick background on the Nevada Film Office. Since 1983, the Nevada Film Office has facilitated the creation of content in Nevada, drawing global attention to the state's businesses, individuals, and our natural landscape. This has boosted job creation, driven small business diversification, and has ignited tourism. The content creation media industry that drives this additional attention to Nevada has resulted in widespread economic development. Before turning to the bill, I'd like to provide additional background on the program. The Transferable Tax Credit for Film and Other Productions program was passed by the state legislature in 2013 and went into effect on January 1, 2014. It is intended to incentivize production companies to film and create content in Nevada that directly results in the creation of high-quality local jobs and the injection of millions of dollars into the local economy, all while showcasing Nevada as a destination to the world. Having administered the program for the last 7 years, we are bringing AB 20 before you today in an effort to improve the law to reflect best practices for the state and align them with industry standards based on our experience. The bill seeks to further clarify certain aspects of the program to reflect the office's working and functional interpretation. It is primarily a housekeeping bill to properly reflect the best practices for the program. Turning to the bill, Section 1 addresses the types of productions that can qualify for the program. Interstitial television programming and interstitial advertisements have been removed as qualified productions, as their inclusion is redundant and inconsistent with standard industry terminology. This section also clarifies that an episode of a series can qualify for the tax credit and removes the limitation for the minimum number of episodes for a reality show. Due to the rise of influence in sports, in Nevada, the definition of a sporting event has been further articulated. Similar clarification was intended when adding pageants to award shows and galas as excluded production types. The law currently states that the office shall approve an application that meets the specified requirements. Section 2 of this bill updates the language from shall approve to may approve, which would allow the office to prioritize productions that are in the best interest of the state. It extends the allowable time to complete the required audit from 90 to 270 days, which is more consistent with the actual time frame required for an auditor to complete the work. The requirement of a Nevada business address to be included on the application has been removed, as productions will typically apply before that address is established. In this section, we are also proposing an amendment to Section 2 that would require productions to include an acknowledgement in the end screen credits that the production was filmed in Nevada by including the Nevada Film Office logo. This would raise awareness to the industry that Nevada is a premier destination to film content and encourage other productions to pursue filming opportunities in Nevada. Section 3 of the bill removes the requirement that the application must be submitted before any qualified costs can be incurred, and instead allows qualified production costs to be incurred during a qualified production period. This section also addresses the manner in which Nevada businesses can acquire tangible personal property for the benefit of the qualified production. This subsection was initially intended to prevent pass-through benefits to non-Nevada businesses, but it also unintentionally prevented Nevada businesses from growing their inventory. This change allows Nevada businesses to grow their inventories to accommodate bigger productions while still preventing pass-through benefits to non-Nevada businesses. This section also addresses tangible personal property acquired as an asset by the production company, allowing our office to limit the amount the asset can qualify through adopted regulations. Similar limitations are employed by other film tax credit programs to prevent incentive dollars from going towards large asset purchases. Section 4 of this bill allows the office to withhold credits to productions who are found to be in violation of laws or who attempt fraud. It expands the protections already in place to ensure that no tax incentive credits are awarded to unwarranted productions. In summary, while this is primarily a house cleanup bill, these changes will make needed improvements to the program's functionality. Thank you for the time, and we welcome any questions that you might have. Thank you very much.
Thank you for that. Senator Kiekeffer.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Appreciate it. So as it relates to Section 2 in the change that you referenced relating to subsection 2, the office shall approve versus may approve. So what is the process by which you're going to determine which qualifying applications you'll approve and deny?
Thank you for the question. Eric Price for the Nevada Film Office. The reason for this change from shall to may just gives us that additional flexibility, mainly due to the fact that our program, as currently written, is a relatively small program. The amount of funding that is available right now, it approved at $10 million per year. That potentially puts us in a situation where we have multiple applicants, but not enough money to award. So this gives us the ability to decide which one. The way the program is currently written, productions that qualify for the incentive that meet the requirements are generally approved. This just gives us a little bit more flexibility to pick one over another if we are running out of money due to the small cap on the program.
I appreciate that. Do you anticipate that you'd be adopting regulations to outline sort of the qualifications that you would consider, or would it just be at the discretion of yourself or the director at that point?
Michael Brown, Director of Governor's Office of Economic Development. I don't believe we'd be adopting regulations. I think that would rest with me as the director.
Any additional,
Actually,
Senator?
we haven't talked.
Oh, go ahead.
Pardon me. Sorry. Yeah, I was just going to say, this isn't that's actually something we hadn't considered, but we'd welcome any thoughts on that. So,
Senator Severs-Ganser.
Thank you, Chair Neal. So I wanted to follow up on that because I think you may want to come up with a system that is straightforward and defensible if you're weighing one project against another. And I don't know whether that would be on the wages or the number of Nevada employees or benefits or something like that. So you may want to consider that. And then I also want to know about the demand side. So how has the demand been maybe outside of the COVID year, just in general? Are these being used? Thank you.
Thank you for the question.
Yeah, Michael Brown, Governor's Office of Economic Development, the first point. I think, if it's the committee's wish that we adopt the regulations in that area, we can do that. Yes. And I'll let Eric talk about the creative side of the business.
Eric Price for the Nevada Film Office. Thank you. On the second point, we have not fully utilized all of the capacity. COVID in this year has been a factor in that. Due to the small size of the program, we are often have larger productions that simply we don't have enough funding to accommodate them. But for the multiple of smaller productions, yes, we have run close to the deadline at times, but we have not exceeded it as of yet. I hope that answers your question.
Yes. Members, any additional questions? Okay. Senator Dennis.
Thank you. So on some of these changes, so the cleanup language, like for example, where it talks about where is it? Adding the I just saw it. Oh, the episodes. Is that something that the industry had given you ideas that they wanted to do some things here, but because of the way the language, they haven't been able to come?
Eric Price for the Nevada Film Office. If you're talking about maybe subsection 1, where we've added some additional the ability to we've removed some of the types of productions, interstitial programming and others, and we've also made an adjustment to the number of reality television shows that are required. Again, based on our experience, we've just tried to clean this bill up a little bit so that it is more clear. At times, we've gotten questions from potential applicants that don't know if their type of production qualifies or not. So just trying to clarify that and clarify the legislative intent as to what types of productions qualify and don't. If that answers your question.
Yeah, I think it does. I think since we originally put this, created the tax credits, I think even just since then, programming has changed, and I think definitely with the pandemic this year, it's put some more pressure on content. So I think that it makes sense to be able to clean some of this up. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you for that. Okay. So I have a couple of questions. So on section 2, I believe it's Sub 3E, can you explain why did you extend beyond the 90 days to 270 days after the completion of the principal photography of the qualified production? Because it's actually super long, so I wanted to know what did you find out and what were the reasons for the extension, since these were corrections that you felt you guys should make for this session?
Thank you for the question. Again, Eric Price from the Nevada Film Office. The reason we extended that was exactly due to our experience with productions. These productions can be simple to very complicated. And a lot of times when a production is completed, they end up having to maybe come back to Nevada and do reshoots, or changes are made in editing that cause them to have to come back and film some new footage. As a result of that, the shorter time frame did not allow them to be able to do that and still have those costs qualified. So extending the time frame allows them the ability to come back as necessary and reshoot if possible, or do any sort of, sometimes a movie can get recasted and they have to go back and reshoot a fair amount of scenes. So extending that time allows them the ability to do that without penalizing them unfairly. Also, 90 days, some of these audits, and depending on the size of the productions, can be rather complicated and require a lot of documentation and support. So, the audit is our check to make sure that the productions that are receiving tax incentive dollars should be receiving them and that those expenses are correct. So by extending that time frame, it just gives us more time to validate everything, to make sure, without running up to an artificial timeline that we've set for ourselves, but by allowing those audits to take place and to take place properly and effectively, to make sure that we have the necessary controls that we're looking for and that those expenditures are accurate, correct, and audited appropriately.
Okay, thank you for that. And then my next question is on still section 2, but it's sub 2. This is where you guys are looking to have the Nevada logo in the screening, but in sub 2, the way it reads, it's like, if the qualified production does not have an in-screen credits, other acknowledgement in the final version, etc. I didn't know if that was like, because it has an and then it goes to the H. Was there supposed to be a penalty there? I mean, because what I heard you say was that ultimately the idea to have these in-screen credits to include the logo of the state is to, number one, lift the state up, right? And to try to use that as a form of advertisement. So if they don't have it in, are we trying to say like it should be in, or there should be a penalty? Because it seems to just cut off at the and. So I wasn't clear if that was a typo or something in sub 2, which is lines 39 through 42.
Thank you for the question. Eric Price from the Nevada Film Office. This is not intended to penalize anyone or in any way. It's intended to be consistent with with most of the other state programs that offer incentives to show the logo. There may be opportunities in which they thank the film office or the state of Nevada in another way that is also appropriate. So we wanted to just make sure we had the flexibility there. We will maybe check the language to make sure that it is clear as to what we're trying to accomplish. But again, we're not trying to create any sort of penalty for anyone who doesn't include the logo. We're just trying to make sure that an acknowledgement to Nevada is included in the production.
Chair Neal, if I may, Kim Spurgeon with the Nevada Film Office, to probably further clarify, some productions that qualify for the incentive do not naturally have end screen credits. Like a commercial can qualify for the program, but a commercial does not have end screen credits. So this that language just allows for something that naturally does not have screen credits, like a commercial that may qualify, to allow the film office logo in another way, or allow some other type of promotion instead of the actual logo, since it doesn't have screen credit.
Okay. So, and then my next question is on, it's the strikeout on, we're still in section 2, but it's the strikeout of the business address. Well, initially it said the business address of the protection company required for it to be in the state. So to me, that goes to the principal place of business, right? And so are we saying that we no longer want the principal place of business to be in Nevada, and in regards to issuing them a tax credit? What are we doing with that strikeout?
Thank you for the question, Eric Price from the Film Office. This just strikes it out so that it doesn't have to be established during the application process. A lot of times production companies will plan a production in Nevada, and then after the production is planned, they will create a production address, a production office where they will do all their business out of. And sometimes that address has not been established as of the application date. So we just wanted to make sure that we weren't preventing the application from being processed because that address had not been established yet. So they eventually will establish that location here locally for the production, but we're just saying that it doesn't have to be done as of the application date, just prior to the start of production.
And thank you for that, because I didn't see a timeline that says, okay, we're not going to make you do it at the time of application, but you need to have it within 30 days in order for us to then issue you this credit. I understand about the temporariness of it, but at the same time, they at least need to have some kind of presence, because there is still an audit and several other things that are being attached to this company to then operate and get these credits, right? And so how come you guys didn't try to give them at least some days, or that they need to get that address established before they can get their application approved?
Yes, thank you for the question. Actually, the incentive at this point does not require them to have a Nevada business license or to be a business established in the state of Nevada. It requires them to have a local address for purposes of the production. Some of the companies that will apply for the incentive will not necessarily be Nevada-based companies. They may be companies based, production companies like NBC Universal or Warner Brothers or Sony, or someone that may not have a local business address. So the incentive at this point, as written, does not require it, but it does require that when they produce locally, that they do have a local production office.
Okay. So then that leads me to the question in section 3, based on that explanation about the business address, because this is the section about if the asset, the calculation. So in making the calculation required by this paragraph, the cost of any property that remains an asset of the Nevada business after the production of the qualified production cannot be included in the calculation. So there's 2 questions there. So although they're not required to have a business license, they're not required to be permanently established, but they do have an address, but it looks like there is some permanency in the things that are associated with them, because you're having a discussion about the calculation of the property, right? And so I want to know how that works. And then I have a separate question specifically on this calculation of the property that you guys are, I guess, excluding. So, but can you answer the first part? Because it just seems like there was some permanency there, because clearly there's an asset that remains. And so I just wanted to get a better understanding about what's going on with the property that they're purchasing.
Sure. Thank you for the question. Again, Eric Price from the Nevada Film Office. There are two similar but separate issues that we're discussing. One is, in this particular, in Section 3 and this particular paragraph, is to clarify for the Nevada businesses that are the supporting businesses that actually are the ones that the production company will rent equipment from. For example, this would apply to a local Nevada business, maybe that rents equipment to the production. So when the production comes to town to complete the production, they will use local businesses in which they will rent equipment from. And when they rent equipment from those local businesses, those are qualified expenditures. This specific paragraph is for those local businesses, our local Nevada businesses, equipment rental businesses. If they acquire equipment for purposes of renting it to that production, when they acquire that equipment, they are able to, the production's able to rent that equipment and then get that as a qualified expenditure. The purposes of this section were, at the time it was developed, we were concerned that companies would set up shop in Nevada, buy a bunch of equipment, but they really wouldn't be Nevada companies. So these rules, typically called pass-through rules, were put into place. What we found, though, was that local small businesses, when a big production would come in and look to rent a bunch of equipment, that local small business would have to acquire more inventory to be able to service that big production, and that some of these, this NRS was a little too constrictive, so that when they were acquiring that new equipment, it was triggering them to not be able to qualify those expenditures through the production. So this change is basically to allow Nevada small businesses more opportunity to increase their inventory, increase their amount of equipment without being penalized for doing so. I hope that is clear.
It is, but what I'm trying to figure out is if that's the explanation. So if you look at line 16, it says that after the production of the qualified production has ended, it must not be included in the calculation as property purchased, rented, or leased in the manner described in the subsection. And this is the subsection that says that not more than 50% of the property purchased, rented, or leased by the production company can then be, the way I read it, be a part of the qualified expenditure. So if the small company is buying more equipment in order to support these larger films, then I just need more of a real life explanation of why, if it's not included after it becomes an asset of theirs, but it's included while it's what? I don't understand how that sentence operates. Must not be included in the calculation as property. And when that occurs.
And Kim, maybe Kim, our film office analyst, might want to jump in. She might be able to better clarify it than me.
Yes, happy to. Kim Spurgeon with the Nevada Film Office. So we're looking at two different kinds of purchases here. So there's the one purchase that remains with the Nevada business as an asset. They're growing their inventory. Then there's another type of purchase or sub-rental where the Nevada business might contract with another business out of state to provide inventory for the production in state. That's what's called a pass-through. Ultimately, the benefit of a pass-through is a non-Nevada business. Now, we allow for some of those pass-throughs to happen because our infrastructure may not have all of the different types of equipment that a production may need. And as long as a Nevada business is the primary source of this type of equipment, they can sub-rent a few specialty items and still have those qualified simply because we don't have them in this state otherwise. But allowing pass-throughs could also potentially allow these essentially shell companies to open up where they claim to be a Nevada business and then they just get all of their inventory from elsewhere, and the benefit to Nevada is nothing, essentially. So we're looking at two different types of transactions with this section. One, we want to allow the businesses to purchase and maintain and keep that inventory that they're then renting out to these productions. And those would not be included in that calculation for the limitation of 50%. But the types of transactions that are limited by that 50% are the ones that are sub-rentals from elsewhere, where we may not have that type of equipment here. We still want the production to come here and film, even if we don't have everything they need. But we still promote the Nevada business to use the rest of their equipment and then sub-rent that small amount that is still needed. I hope that clarifies.
It does. Thanks. And then my last question is on the, I guess, the latter part of section 4, which is your added language about the withholding of the transferable tax credits. And so you have a term here that's dependent upon a legal action, and then also the term where you're saying if the company violates any state or local law. And so any state or local law is a catch-all. So can you explain why you inserted that? Because any is not necessarily related to the film itself. So can you talk about why you decided to place that catch-all in sub 2, line 19? Because it's a catch-all provision of any, I could see committing a crime and all those other things. Clearly don't want anybody to, rob somebody and then get a tax credit, but any state and local law is very expansive to withhold the transferable tax credit.
Thank you for the question,
Okay.
Eric Price from Nevada Film Office. As you said, yes, our goal is not to create additional, our goal is not prevent anyone from receiving the tax credits. Our goal with this was merely to provide more security for the state of Nevada, that when we issue tax credits, that the company has not violated laws or not completed their obligation in Nevada when it comes to vendors getting compensated fairly, making sure that the production is run in accordance with the permitting offices, and that the production is done completely. Our goal is not to try to penalize productions or not provide a tax credit, because they had a traffic violation or something. So if this
He froze.
companies that work here.
I can jump in here, Kim Spurgeon with the Nevada Film Office.
Wait, Miss Spurgeon, wait, are you going to jump in at the moment that he froze and then we're going to hear that sentence? Because, or none of it?
No, I'll let him continue.
Oh, was there a technical difficulty? I apologize. Again, this is Eric Price from the Film Office. Again, I don't know if the video froze. Our goal is not to penalize productions if there's a traffic violation or anything of that matter. Our goal is to merely state that prior to receiving tax incentives from Nevada, that the companies that do produce here and film content here have made good on their obligations to the vendors and the crew members that they hire to ensure that the tax incentives are awarded for valid expenditures, and that they have not, broken any local laws. It's not intended to penalize them for, miscellaneous violations. Kim, maybe you can add to that.
That was good.
Yeah, that was good. All right, so that was it for my questions. So we will go ahead and open up for support for AB 20. We'll take the folks, because this is so weird. So we'll take the folks that are actually in the room, and then we'll go to the folks on the Zoom and on the line.
Good afternoon, Chair and members of the committee. For the record, my name is Dylan Keith, Policy Analyst with the Vegas Chamber. The Chamber has historically supported the offering of transferable tax credits as a tool for economic diversity and diversification, and we are in support of AB 20. Thank you.
Thanks for that. Is there anyone else in the room for support for AB 20? Okay, so BPS, we will go to Zoom. Is there anyone in Zoom and support for AB 20?
To take your place in the queue to offer support for AB 20, excuse me, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. Once more, to offer support for AB 20, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. Thank you, Chair. It appears there are no callers wishing to testify in support at this time.
Okay, so we'll move to opposition.
To offer opposition to AB 20, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue.
BPS, we actually have a person in opposition in person, so we'll take him first and then go to the phone line. That's all right.
Thank you, Chair.
Okay.
Thank you, Chair. And members of the committee, Marcos Lopez, Americans for Prosperity, Nevada. Americans for Prosperity is a staunch opponent of film tax credit programs all around the country. Study after study shows that they do not deliver the economic impact that they claim that it will. We have studies from both Michigan and Maryland showing that these jobs are only temporary, an average of 23 days. We have a Pennsylvania study showing that a return of investment for every dollar to only be a mere 14 cents. And pretty much aside from every study, independent study has shown that tax credits generate less than 30% for every $1 of spending on it. In general, we oppose tax credits. We think this is a method of picking winners and losers, and it takes away from our tax base, which then leads for calls for higher taxes. So we urge that you guys vote no on this. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Okay, so BPS will go to the phone lines. Is anyone signed in opposition for AB 20?
To take your place in the queue to offer opposition to AB 20, please press star 9 now. Once more, please press star 9 now to offer opposition to AB 20. Thank you, Chair. Looks like there are no callers wishing to offer opposition at this time.
Okay, so we'll move to neutral.
To offer neutral testimony on AB 20, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. Thank you, Chair. It appears there are no callers wishing to offer neutral testimony either at this time.
Okay, so Mr. Bryce or Director Brown, would you like to offer any closing comments?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm good here. Eric?
Okay, so we will close the hearing on AB 20 and open the hearing on AB 66.
Madam Chair, thank you. I'm joined also on this one for help on the Q&A by Melanie Sheldon, who's our Professional Economic Development Officer based in Southern Nevada. When I became director, it became apparent to me that when the board approves an abatement, that there were a number of companies that had not then gone to the next stage of entering into a contractual agreement with GOAD, and that some of these had stretched for some time. AB 66 basically says that if an applicant is approved for an abatement or incentive, that they have to, within 1 year, enter into that contractual arrangement with the state of Nevada, and failing to do that, that would be stale and require reapproval by the board. And I raise this because there has been one instance where because the contract had not been signed, under the current statute, the company uses the date GOAD received the application, regardless of the time that it elapsed. That creates the possibility for the company to apply the abated rate towards purchases paid at the full rate. And that could result in the state refunding fully paid taxes. And having unexpected refunds can have a budgetary impact on state and local governments, particularly if it's a significant amount of hiring or purchasing occurred. While this has not been common, AB 66 would close that loophole. It would also have, I hope, the effect of limiting forum shopping, where companies come to Nevada and they seek an abatement and incentive, and then once they have their board approval, possibly look at other states to see if there's a better offer out there if we put a one-year time frame on it. We brought that measure over to the Assembly, and Melanie can answer any questions that you might have on this. While we were in the Assembly, because we've had these quarterly meetings with the Department of Taxation, they brought forward an amendment to improve operations on their side of the equation, because in Nevada, we have statutory abatements with a full audit requirement with clawback provisions. So this is a very rigid system, and we're joined by Terry Upton from the Department of Taxation, who can explain what their amendment that was added in the Assembly does.
Okay. Department of Tax.
Thank you. Terry Upton, Deputy Director for the Department of Taxation. The department has been working with GOED for the last year or more, meeting with them on this issue as well as other issues. And we believe that it was important that we ensure that businesses were paying the appropriate amount of tax when it was due. So one of the amendments that we asked for is that businesses who came to the department seeking a exemption of a tax exemption certificate did so on a timely basis, and if they had purchased those purchases that were approved for abatement between the time they received or they executed that contract to the point where we gave them the resale or the exemption certificate, we would allow those refunds for that period. If the business entity failed to provide that exemption certificate to their vendors after the contract was executed and after they received their exemption certificate, and if those total purchases were 50% or more of their approved abatement purchases, then they would be deemed to be out of compliance with the contract, and they would be required to pay a penalty of 10% of the abated amount. This is actually beneficial for the state because not many, but there have been a few taxpayers who have failed to take advantage of that exemption certificate and have waited until after the purchasing period is over. Then they approach the department requesting a credit on those taxes, and it was difficult for the counties because that money had already been distributed, and now we would have to claw back that money in order to issue a refund. Another thing the amendment provides is that the 10% or the interest will not be allowed if somebody should seek that. No businesses in the past have done that, but we just wanted to ensure that was not something they could do, and we would put a stop to that ahead of time. And that is basically the abatement.
And Michael Brown, Madam Chair, Governor's Office of Economic Development, I've had a chance to meet with the auditors over there, and I want to commend the Department of Taxation for the diligent work they do and for the issues they flag. And like I say, we meet quarterly with them. And I also arranged just a month ago for the Department of Taxation to brief our 8 regional development associations to remind them that companies that are coming through this process will also eventually be audited at the end of the process. process. And so, I want everybody, when they go in to seek an abatement and incentive, understand that, they now have this obligation to the government. And so we did that refresher with the staff of the regional development authorities. And I want to thank Director Young for always being there to help us on these matters. And with that, we could take questions on this. And like I said, I'll be assisted on this by Melanie Sheldon and on my staff.
Okay, thank you for that. Senator Severs-Gansert.
Thank you, Chair Neal. In looking at section 1, let's see, 1, 2, A and B, if they don't use the document basically for the 50% or more purchases, they're deemed out of compliance, and then there's a 10% penalty. If you're deemed out of compliance, do you claw back all of the abated amount, or you withdraw from the abatements, and then you have a 10% penalty, or is it just a 10% penalty?
Carrie Upton, Deputy Director for the department. It would be 10% on the abated amount, but we would not void the contract in any way. It's just that 10%.
Thank you. So this is all dependent on section 1, part 2. So what if you are out of compliance? How does that work? If you're just normally out of compliance, it's not because you didn't produce your form.
Again, Terry Upton, Deputy Director for the department. The out of compliance would be on the 2-year mark. The entity is audited. And if we found that they had paid the tax at 50% more than their purchases, then we would find them that they were not in compliance and charge them the 10% of that abated amount. But that's how we would know they were out of compliance. But that would be the only area that they would be deemed out of compliance by the department.
Thank you. So the definition of out of compliance is solely related to the use of the document. There's no other way to be out of compliance.
Terry Upton, Deputy Director for the Department of Taxation. Yes, that is correct. That is the only non-compliant issue.
Thank you.
Any additional questions? So I had a question in the same section, but a different one. So this is to Ms. Upton. So how long because I'm assuming that I'm going after paragraph B in section 1.4, I think it is. How long had the local governments not been receiving their proceeds from the refund?
Terry Upton, Deputy Director for the department. The local governments, the amount that the department collects is distributed to the local governments every month. So it's not that they would not be getting that amount. It's just that at the end of the 2-year period, when we go to audit that business entity and find that they have overpaid the tax because they haven't taken advantage of that abatement, then we would have to go back and claw that money back so we could issue the refund.
So I guess let me rephrase the question, because I thought you were inserting this because there was a prior issue. And so I was wondering how long had this issue of the distribution been occurring? Because the clawback, that provision that you have in B, is to fix what was going on, right? No?
Terry Upton, Deputy Director for the department. Maybe non-compliance is not a good definition of that, because it's not that they are not in compliance with the agreement. It's just that they've overpaid. The business entity has overpaid.
Got it. Thanks. All right. So, seeing no more questions, we will go ahead and open up for support for AB 66.
To take your place to offer support for AB 66, please.
So, sorry, BPS, we're dealing with humans now, so in person. So we actually have a physical person in the room. I'm sorry. So we will take the actual physical folks in the room and then we'll go to the phone line. Sorry.
All right, once again, good afternoon, Chair and members of the committee. For the record, my name is Dylan Keith, Policy Analyst with the Vegas Chamber. We support the clarifying language in AB 66, and we urge your support as well. Thank you.
Thank you for that. So BPS, now we will go to the phone line for anyone who's in support of AB 66.
Take your place in the queue to offer support for AB 66. Please press star 9 now. Caller with the last 3 digits, 114. Please state and spell your name for the record. You may begin.
Greetings, Chair, members of the committee. Amber Stidham, that's S-T-I-D-H-A-M with the Henderson Chamber of Commerce. Just want to say that we appreciate GoEd for their outreach to our chamber in the development of this bill. Proposals like this, we believe, aid our diversification efforts in both new industry and the jobs that Nevadans seek, which is also a primary focus of our Henderson Development Association over the last 15 years. We are pleased to support AB 66 in its newest iteration. We believe it provides additional structure for the ability of businesses to recover taxes that they were ultimately approved for. But overall, we believe that this proposal is a good tool that will encourage relocation and expansion to support our state's economic development efforts. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. There are no other callers wishing to offer support at this time.
Okay, so we will move to opposition for AB 66. We have in-person BPS. I just want to say that.
Good afternoon, Madam Chairwoman, members of the committee. Greg Esposito, representing the Nevada State Pipe Trades. We are only in opposition to this bill because of the legislative standard that if you are not in support as written, then you're in opposition. Our opposition was brought up on the Assembly side during the hearing by Executive Secretary Treasurer of the Southern Nevada Building Trades, Bill Stanley. And so I'd sort of repeat the sentiment that he made, the comments that he made at that time. I don't need to talk about the economic protections of NRS 338 in this committee. Everyone here knows the importance of those protections. And those protections were sort of in a way expanded last year with AB 190, where boards and bodies that oversee construction or have something to do with construction are also subject to the standards of NRS 338. As far as I can tell, the Governor's Office of Economic Development is not. The point of economic development is to utilize, to squeeze everything you can out of what it is we do with our abatements and incentives. For example, right now in North Las Vegas, there's a liquid hydrogen processing plant being built. It's huge. You can see it from the freeway about a mile away by the speedway. And they are using workers out of Texas. They're importing pretty much their entire workforce, as far as we can tell, and building that project, having received abatements from the Governor's Office of Economic Development. And we don't feel that's right. We feel that the construction of a project, or the remodel of a project, it's important to capture the potential economic benefits during that phase as well. And so we're asking for the opportunity to work with the bill's sponsor to discuss a way that we can amend the bill with the language, or similar language, that was in AB 190 last session, to capture the economic stimulus of the construction of projects that they offer incentives or abatements to. Thank you, and available for any questions.
So yeah, thank you for that. So I do have a question. So you want GoEd to amend the bill to mandate that they be Nevada-based workers?
No.
What are you,
So
I need straight sentences.
NRS 338 is prevailing wage protections.
Correct.
And so, just as in AB 190, it states, any construction, remodel, renovation undertaken needs to adhere to certain standards in NRS 338. And so what we're asking is that this bill be amended to where if a company or business receives abatements, that company or business has to, when engaging in construction or remodel, has to adhere to certain standards in NRS 338.
So currently, the statute says what? The average state wage that's being offered in that category, right?
By the way, Greg Esposito for the record, Nevada State Pipe Trades. If you're talking about the current GOED regulations,
Yes.
I don't believe, and I'll be corrected if I'm wrong, that those standards are for construction. I believe that those are for operation. If I'm wrong, then I believe the standard is like a flat 25 on average, and that would be for construction and operation. So I don't believe there are any standards on the construction of a project that's received abatements. If I'm wrong, I apologize.
Okay.
Thank you.
So I appreciate you bringing that up. All right. Any other folks in opposition to AB 66? Okay, so BPS, we will go to the phone lines for opposition.
If you would like to offer opposition to AB 66, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. Thank you, Chair. It appears there are no callers wishing to offer opposition to AB 66.
Is anyone dialed in for neutral?
To offer neutral testimony on AB 66, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. There are no callers to give neutral testimony at this time.
Okay, so Director Brown, can you offer comment on the wage, the average wage discussion for operations versus construction, please?
Madam Chair, I'm not familiar with if there's a distinction between that. We're abating the operations, but I'm not sure how construction fits into that, and I'll have to turn to someone on my staff maybe that could answer that.
Thank you, Director Brown. Madam Chair, Melanie Sheldon, Director of Business Development. Go ahead for the record. No, there are no construction wage requirements. We abate the actual company and their operations, and they are held to the statewide average wage as set every year by DETA. Our data center abatement, our $3.5 billion package, as well as a $1 billion package, does have a construction requirement where 50% of the construction employees, at least 50%, must be Nevada residents, but we don't, and they also must be offered healthcare, but we don't have any parameters around the wages for construction employees.
So is that in your GOED report where are construction workers, are they delineated in your report so that we know what is the wage that is being paid? Can we find that like a line item?
In the Tesla annual report, or the $3.5 billion report, sorry, Madam Chairman, we do actually record the wages of the construction workers. For the data center abatement, we do not. We just measure the residency requirement.
Sorry. So for the project, I don't know if the hydrogen one, I've never been to that one, but is it on Apex, the hydrogen one that was, okay. No, yes or no?
Yes, Madam Chair.
Yes, okay, so they've triggered the 38 million with that hydrogen project?
Madam Chair, Melanie Sheldon for the record. No, they received our standard abatement package
only focuses on incentivizing the company, and it don't dictate construction usage they may hire.
I promise you, I heard none of that. It was like, I don't know if it's literally the way that, I don't know, your internet is like making you garbled right now. Can you repeat that? I don't think if you move the camera closer, I think. Okay, let me stop. But seriously, can you repeat all of that?
Yes, Madam Chair, for the record, yes. Melanie, yes, Madam Chair, Melanie Sheldon for the record. The project that is being spoken about in Apex Industrial Park received our standard abatement packet. So that has no parameters around construction hiring or construction usage. It purely incentivizes the operation.
Do you have a report on that one? Or do you have any data on that right now? That's been, I think that's almost two years. They started that last session, right?
This was a project, Madam Chair, for the record, Melanie Sheldon. This was a project incentivized around at the end of 2008.
Is there a report
Madam Chair,
currently?
Michael Brown.
Okay.
This was approved in September of 2018, September 20th of 2018, and we can provide an update for the committee.
Okay. So thank you for that information. I think there's a valid point, but we'll talk offline. So we will close. So do you have any closing remarks before I close the hearing?
Madam Chair, thank you. And I believe we received drafting help with the taxation amendment from the staff at LCD, for which we're most appreciative.
Okay. All right. So we will go ahead and close the hearing on AB 66 and then open the hearing on AB 69.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Michael Brown, Executive Director of the Governor's Office of Economic Development. This is it's an update of kind of some of the core statutes surrounding GOED and also involving the film office. The most important things that I think it does is it adds the Director of Business and Industry to the GOED board. When I was Director of the Department of Business and Industry, I did not have a line of sight into the economic development activities of the state. However, the reverse was true. There was a line of sight from GOED to BNI through the private activity program. And yet we do a lot of work with business and industry, and we have two non-voting members of the GOED board, the Director of DETR and the Chancellor. And so we think it's fitting that the Director of Business and Industry become a non-voting member of the GOED board so that they're formally in all the information flow that goes on, and we can do more joint planning as we have tried to do. Another change that it makes in Section 2 was just to clarify, and this is where we got significant help from the Legislative Council Bureau, what constitutes a quorum, and we're appreciative for that. And then we were in the peculiar situation that in some of the governor's cabinet is appointed directly, and some of the governor's cabinet is appointed on recommendations that come through a commission or a board. And in the case of this position that I occupy now, there was a requirement that there be a search committee and they submit 3 names to the governor. Well, my appointment was delayed for about 2 months because they struggled to find the 3rd name. And Dana Bennett, who was on both the search committee and is a member of the GOED board, suggested that we change that to basically say up to 3 persons should be submitted to the governor for consideration to be the head of GoEd, so that we don't get trapped in that situation again. Section 3 of the bill changes the motion picture division of motion pictures formally to the Nevada Film Office. Section 5 creates a library of audiovisual recordings there, and then I think we make a few other technical changes with respect to film, and I think Eric could answer any of those questions, but I think they're all just updating old language. So thank you, Madam Chair and members of the committee. We'd be glad to answer any questions.
Thank you for that. Members, any questions? Senator Severs-Gansert.
Thank you, Chair Neal. So just about the audiovisual or the visual depictions, do we already have those? Because the language is sort of changing. It looks like maybe we had them, but you're changing the language, or do we not have them and you need to create them? Thank you.
Thank you for the question, Eric Price from the Nevada Film Office. Yes, we currently do have them. The change just facilitates our ability to have them online and not the requirement to have them in print. The online option is more congruent with our current times, more environmentally friendly, and allows us to offer it to a wider audience, and does not limit us to merely to print. Gives us that additional flexibility. Thank you.
Thank you. I noticed there wasn't a fiscal note, so I thought maybe it existed, so thank you.
Thank you for that. Senator Ratty.
I'd like to ask a question that is tangential to the conversation, but vaguely related. Did Nomadland get a tax credit, a film tax credit?
Thank you, Eric Price from the Nevada Film Office. No, they did not. They did not on that one. But it did do well in the Oscars and did highlight Northern Nevada, so that's exciting.
Gerlach. Thank you. I'm sorry, I just made a complete Northern Nevada foul. It was Empire, not Gerlach.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay, seeing no questions, we will go for support. So we actually have BPS, we have a physical person in support. That would be Dylan for the 3rd time.
All right, thank you once again, Chair and members of the committee. We are Dylan Keith, for the record, policy analyst with the Vegas Chamber. We are in support of AB 69 for its clarity and improving of the structural governance of GoEd, and we thank you for your time.
Thank you for that. All right, so we will go to the phone lines for support for AB 69.
Thank you, Chair. The phone lines are open and working. However, there are no callers at this time. Would you like me to take a moment to wait for anyone to show up?
No. I'm sure if they were there, they would have been there for 1, 2, and 3. Okay, so we will move to opposition for AB 69. Is there anyone on the phone line for opposition?
No, Chair, there are no callers for opposition at this time.
Okay, so we'll move to neutral.
There are no callers for neutral either.
All righty then. So Director Brown, any closing comments?
Madam Chair, no, I thank you and the members of the committee for hearing us today. And I want to thank the Legislative Council Bureau staff for the support they provided us in the development of these 3 bills.
Thank you for that. So we will close the hearing on AB 69, and then we will open up for public comment. BPS?
Thank you, Chair, once more.
Okay, sorry.
Yes, the public lines are open and working. However, there are no callers to give public testimony, or sorry, public comment at this time.
Okay, so we will go ahead and adjourn Senate revenue.